in verse 6, your throne, O God, this is a reference to Messiah here. It's the sons of men and the king who is Messiah, or the fairest of the human race. Grace is poured on your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. This is the Messiah. God, Messiah has a God. God, the one God, has blessed you forever. This is a messianic passage about what Messiah is going to do. Gird your sword on your thigh, O mighty one, in your splendor and your majesty. Ride on victoriously. This is a prayer that Jesus will conquer his enemies at the second coming. For the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness, let your right hand, which is the symbol of your strength, your right hand, your arrows are sharp. Peoples fall under you. Your arrows in the heart of the king's enemies. Still talking about the Messiah. Your throne, O God, is forever and ever. It's a very unusual use of the word God addressed to the Messiah here, and you'll find that the idea that you'd have two gods is completely ruled out immediately. So lest you should imagine that there are now two gods, we read in 6, second half of verse 6, a scepter of uprightness is the scepter of your kingdom. You, addressing this Messiah God here, you have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Now here's the possible correction. Therefore, God, who is your God. Okay, so this God has a God. That's clear. Therefore, he cannot be the ultimate God. So all this is a very unusual and rare messianic use of the word Elohim to describe Jesus, who is uniquely, as we said earlier, the representative of God. So the key then is in verse 7, God, who is your God, and sometimes then the translations, the NAB, I believe it is, the Catholic Bible, rightly puts a small g on the first one in 6, your throne, O God, little g, and they have a note to the effect that this is a messianic title for Jesus, who himself has a God. As in the book of Revelation, multiple times, Jesus is said to have a God, therefore he cannot be God. God doesn't have a God. The ultimate one God, the God of the creed of Jesus in Mark 12:29, ask any of your Jewish friends, what does it mean? It's a Unitarian creed. Everybody could know that the creed of Judaism is always unitary monotheism. Jews never believe that God is more than one person. That would be the ultimate crime against God. And Jesus was a Jew agreeing with a friendly Jew in Mark 12. Friendly Jew said, tell us what's the greatest of all the commandments. Most people, if you ask them, will say, well, it's love your neighbor as yourself. That's the second commandment. But what about the first commandment? Listen, Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord. How many lords is one Lord? So that's now touching base with the original Bible, which is not a Trinitarian book at all. It's a Jewish book. And Jesus himself, whom we are to follow and follow his teachings, we're to obey him by doing what he says. We ought to be paying close attention to Mark 12:29, where Jesus gave us the first unmatched commandment of all, which is the Lord our God is one single Lord.
What's unfortunate about
Hmm.
the Psalm 45,
Mm.
from where Hebrews 1 is citing,
Yes.
is the translations are confusing, to say the least. They render, as you see there, invariably title God. The word God is a title, by the way.
Mm.
Angels are called gods. The judges
Hmm.
of Israel are called God. So it's a title.
Hmm.
And what's unfortunate is when it's applied to the Davidic king here in Psalm
Hmm.
45,
Hmm.
they capitalize the word
Yep.
God. It's something they do not do, translators, when it comes to angels.
Right.
So it's confusing because, as you said, the writer goes on to identify another capital G God.
Yep.
That now sounds like polytheism.
Would
Now
be.
you got two capital G
Yes.
gods, don't you?
Well, of course you have, and that is polytheism. And your translations there, so the NAB, the New American Bible, which is the Roman Catholic translation, you'll find that it has a lowercase g when referred to Jesus there, which is very smart. Some good scholars amongst those people.
Yeah, you have to dig for it. The NAB,
Yes. Hmm.
they actually changed back to capital G God in their latest iteration. I think the
Yes,
1990 something
that's right.
is the
Hmm.
only one that has
Yes.
lowercase.
Absolutely. It's a secondary use of the word God. So a small g would be appropriate. And as you said, some of the translations, particularly the Roman Catholic translation in its earlier form, has a lowercase g in that Psalm 45 to distinguish between the lowercase God, the Messiah. Just
Right.
remember that 1,300 times in the New Testament alone, 1,300 times, the word God means the Father. This isn't very difficult. You don't then say, well, I've got one verse here which contradicts 1,300. That's not a good way to go about evidence. Don't make the exceptions into the rules. Take the vast majority of cases, 1,300 times, thousands of times in the Bible, God is designated by singular personal pronouns. He's I. I am the Lord your God. There's no one else except me. I alone am God. No one else is God except me. Now, if I were to say that about myself, you'd have no difficulty understanding. But we unfortunately go to church with a whole set of traditions which don't date from the Bible. The unfortunate thing is we say, well, I believe in the Bible only, sola scriptura. Well, you don't actually, because you haven't bothered to check to see that what you're getting in church is really in the Bible or is it a man-made tradition. That's the challenge.